Honorable Nakachinda exposes the 3 types of leaders destroying nations. Which one are you following? Honorable Raphael Nakachinda has delivered one of the most unexpected and powerful addresses of the year, a speech that breaks down what he calls the 3 portraits of patriotic leadership. But here's the twist. These portraits are not just political ideas. They're a direct challenge to the current leadership, past administrations, and anyone seeking power in Zambia. Is Nakachinda redefining patriotism or subtly calling out leaders who fail to live up to it? Stay with me, because the meaning behind these 3 portraits could reshape Zambia's political conversation heading into 2026. Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of InspirAfrica Official. I'm Nakash. It's been quite a week here, hasn't it? The usual bustle of parliamentary sessions, the endless committees, the predictable partisan exchanges. But sometimes, just sometimes, something cuts through all that noise like a lightning bolt splitting the sky. And when it does, you know you're witnessing something that needs to be heard. Today's lead story is one that demands your full attention. Picture this: a nation's treasury, bleeding. Resources vanishing like smoke in the wind. Development projects stalled, promises broken, citizens left wondering why progress remains a distant dream while their leaders feast. And then, from the very heart of government, a voice rises, not in whisper, but in thunderous declaration. Honorable Cornelius Mwikwa Nakachinda, Member of Parliament and Government Chief Whip, steps forward with a classification so precise, so damning, that it forces every citizen to ask themselves a chilling question. What kind of leader is steering your nation's ship? Is it the one who hoards wealth in foreign banks while hospitals lack medicine? The one whose signature appears on every suspicious contract, whose family members suddenly possess unexplained mansions and fleets of luxury vehicles? Or perhaps it's the one who speaks eloquently about service while systematically dismantling the very institutions meant to hold power accountable? But here's what should truly terrify you: what if you've been defending one of these leaders? What if your loyalty, your vote, your voice has been weaponized to protect the very person destroying your children's future? How do you know which type of leader you're following? And more importantly, when the reckoning comes and history shows us it always does, which side of justice will you find yourself standing on? Factual foundation, background and timeline. The revelation came to light during what many expected to be just another routine parliamentary session. But Honorable Nakachinda had other plans. Speaking from the floor of the National Assembly, the government chief whip delivered what political analysts are now calling one of the most significant addresses on leadership accountability in recent parliamentary history. The context is crucial. Across the African continent, citizens have grown increasingly frustrated with corruption, nepotism, and the concentration of wealth among political elites while the majority struggle with poverty, unemployment, and failing public services. Nakachinda's address wasn't born in a vacuum. It came after months of mounting public pressure, social media campaigns demanding accountability, and a growing chorus of voices, from civil society organizations to religious leaders, calling for a fundamental reassessment of what leadership means in the 21st century African context. The timing was deliberate. In recent weeks, several high-profile corruption cases have dominated headlines across multiple African nations. Questions about procurement irregularities, unexplained wealth among public officials, and the erosion of democratic institutions have created a climate of deep mistrust between citizens and their elected representatives. It was against this backdrop that Nakachinda rose to speak. His audience wasn't just the members of parliament sitting in that chamber. His words were aimed at every voter, every taxpayer, every citizen who has ever wondered why their nation remains trapped in cycles of poverty despite abundant natural resources. What followed was not a typical political speech filled with partisan rhetoric. Instead, Nakachinda presented a framework, a typology of leadership that cuts across party lines, ideologies, and national boundaries. He identified 3 distinct categories of leaders, each representing a specific threat to national development and prosperity. Direct evidence. Let me share with you, in his own powerful words, exactly what Honorable Nakachinda revealed to the nation. There are 3 types of leaders, Nakachinda began, his voice steady but weighted with the gravity of truth. And I want every Zambian, every African, to understand this clearly because, your future, your children's future, depends on recognizing which type is leading you. He continued, leaning forward with unmistakable intensity. The first type, and perhaps the most dangerous, is the leader who steals from the very people they swore to serve. These are not just corrupt officials, no. These are systematic plunderers. They look at the national treasury not as a sacred trust but as their personal bank account. Every contract becomes an opportunity for kickbacks. Every appointment is calculated to benefit their network. They surround themselves with enablers, with praise singers who tell them what they want to hear while the nation bleeds. Nakachinda paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle before delivering his next observation. But here's what makes them so insidious: they don't steal alone. They create elaborate systems, ghost workers on government payrolls, inflated procurement contracts, shell companies owned by their relatives. And when you try to investigate, suddenly you're branded as divisive, as unpatriotic, as someone working for the opposition. They weaponize ethnicity, they weaponize religion, they weaponize anything that can distract from their theft. The chief whip then moved to his second category. The second type of leader, and make no mistake, this one is equally destructive, is the leader who tolerates theft. These ones, they themselves might not be stealing. They might even be honest in their personal dealings. But they see corruption happening around them and they do nothing. They know their minister is awarding contracts to family members. They know their permanent secretary has unexplained wealth. They know, but they choose silence. Why? Because they benefit from the stability that silence brings. Because speaking up might cost them their position. Because they've convinced themselves that they can do some good even while evil flourishes around them. His voice took on a tone of profound disappointment. These leaders tell themselves they're being pragmatic. They say, I'm working within the system to change it. But you know what? While they're working within the system is working on them. It corrupts them not through their hands but through their silence. And their silence, their complicity, it emboldens the thieves. It tells them that there will be no consequences, that they can continue with impunity. Then came the third category, and Nakachinda's analysis became even sharper. The third type of leader is the one who fights those trying to expose theft. This is perhaps the most tragic. These are people who might have started with good intentions. Maybe they were reformers once. Maybe they genuinely wanted to serve. But somewhere along the way, they became invested in protecting the system rather than the people. When whistleblowers emerge, they attack them. When journalists investigate, they threaten them. When citizens demand accountability, they label them as enemies of progress. He elaborated with visible passion. These leaders use state machinery, the police, the intelligence services, even the courts, to intimidate anyone who dares to speak truth. They pass laws that restrict freedom of expression. They create environments where fear is the dominant emotion. And here's the thing, they justify all of this by saying they're protecting national security, or promoting unity, or ensuring stability. But what they're really protecting is theft. What they're really ensuring is that corrupt networks can operate without fear. Nakachinda's conclusion was unambiguous. So I ask you today, which type of leader do you have? Is it the one who steals? The one who tolerates theft? Or the one who fights those exposing theft? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? Because until we, as citizens, demand better, until we refuse to vote for these types of leaders, until we hold them accountable regardless of their tribe or party, we will remain trapped in this cycle of poverty and underdevelopment. Deeper analysis, implications and reactions. The implications of Nakachinda's address ripple far beyond any single nation's borders. What he's articulated is a framework that applies across the African continent and, indeed, across developing democracies worldwide. Political analysts have noted that this typology forces citizens to move beyond simplistic narratives of good guys versus bad guys. It acknowledges that corruption isn't just about individual bad actors but about systemic failures that involve multiple levels of complicity. Dr. Chansa Kabwe, a governance specialist at the University of Zambia, offered this perspective. What makes Nakachinda's analysis powerful is that it implicates not just the obvious criminals but also those who enable them through their silence and those who actively work to prevent accountability. It's a call for comprehensive reform, not just the prosecution of a few scapegoats. But not everyone has welcomed this message. Some within political circles have expressed discomfort with such stark categorizations. Opposition politicians have questioned whether Nakachinda is applying these standards to his own government. "It's easy to make powerful speeches," noted one opposition MP who requested anonymity. The question is whether he's willing to identify which category his own colleagues fall into. Civil society organizations, however, have largely praised the address. The Zambia chapter of Transparency International issued a statement commending any public official brave enough to articulate the mechanics of corruption so clearly, while also noting that words must be followed by concrete action. The religious community has also weighed in. Bishop Moses Moip of the Council of Churches observed, "This is fundamentally a moral crisis. When leaders forget that they are stewards, not owners, when they prioritize personal accumulation over public service, they betray not just the people but the very principles of just governance." The economic dimensions cannot be ignored either. Economist Dr. Labinda Habazoka pointed out that each of these leadership types represents a specific mechanism of economic hemorrhaging. The first type directly extracts wealth. The second type allows inefficiencies and leakages to persist. The third type increases the cost of doing business through unpredictability and the suppression of information. All three result in reduced investment, capital flight, and perpetual underdevelopment. Social media has erupted with debate since the address. Citizens across multiple African nations have begun applying Nakachinda's framework to their own leaders, creating viral discussions about accountability and governance. The hashtag which type of leader has trended in several countries, with citizens sharing examples and demanding reforms. Yet unresolved questions remain. How exactly should citizens distinguish between necessary confidentiality in governance and the silence that enables corruption? When does pragmatic coalition building cross the line into complicity? And perhaps most critically, what mechanisms exist or should exist to ensure that leaders who fall into these categories face consequences? Some legal scholars have suggested that Nakachinda's categories could inform anti-corruption legislation. Rather than just criminalizing corrupt acts, we need laws that address complicit silence and the obstruction of accountability mechanisms, argues Professor Mundya Kaitoshi of the Zambian Law School. The international community has also taken notice. Several development partners and international organizations working in governance and anti-corruption have referenced Nakachinda's framework in their recent reports, seeing it as a grassroots articulation of principles they've long promoted through technical language. But perhaps the most significant implication is psychological. By clearly categorizing these leadership failures, Nakachinda has given citizens a vocabulary to understand and discuss what they've long felt but struggled to articulate. He's moved the conversation from vague complaints about corruption to specific, identifiable patterns of behavior that can be recognized, called out, and potentially changed. The challenge now is whether this moment of clarity will translate into sustained action or whether, like so many previous calls for reform, it will fade into the background noise of everyday politics. Thank you so much for watching this edition of InspirAfrica Official. This is one of those stories that doesn't end when the video stops. It continues in your community, in your conversations, in the choices you make about who you support and why. Honorable Nakachinda has given us a mirror to hold up to our leadership but also to ourselves. Because we, as citizens, as voters, as the people who grant legitimacy to those who govern, we bear responsibility too. So I want to hear from you in the comments below. Which type of leader do you see in your country? Have you witnessed examples of leaders who steal, who tolerate theft, or who fight those exposing corruption? And more importantly, what are you doing about it? What can we, collectively, do to demand better? This is not just about Zambia. This is about Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, every nation on this continent and beyond where the promise of independence and democracy has been undermined by those who view public office as an opportunity for private enrichment. Share this video. Let's get this conversation going. Tag your friends, your family, your community leaders. Because change begins when we refuse to accept what has become normalized. Change begins when we name the problem clearly and commit to solving it together. I'll be back tomorrow with more stories that matter, more conversations that challenge us to think deeper and demand better. Until then, stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking the hard questions. This is Nakash, and you've been watching InspirAfrica Official. God bless you all.